Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take Jupiter's sextile with Uranus and run it through all 12 of the houses based on your rising sign. So we will take a look at this planetary combination and the way it's landing in your chart according to the whole sign house version of your birth chart. So I recommend listening to this, of course, in terms of your rising sign so that it matches best with your birth chart. You could treat it like a sun sign horoscope and look at it through the lens of a sun sign chart. But I don't recommend that personally. I think it's better to always look at your rising sign because that's always going to correspond with the actual whole sign house layout of your birth chart. So all that being said, I am also, before we dive into that today, I'm really excited to announce, and I've been announcing this week, that two of my mentors, whose names are Loka and Vidarbha, are offering a 12-week immersion class on the Bhagavad Gita. I'm really glad to be supporting them with regard to this upcoming class. You can visit the website bhaktywise.com to learn more about it. Click on the Study With Us tab. You can scroll down. It starts on March 15th. It runs on Tuesday evenings, 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. All sessions are recorded if you can't make it live, and you get copies of them. There's also optional daily meditation, mantra meditation lessons that you can drop into for free. So it's a great program. It's donation based. So you can donate whatever you can to support the program and join the class. If you like the work that I do and you appreciate the spiritual approach that I take to astrology, I have no doubt that you'll enjoy studying with two of the people who I emulate. So check it out. All right, that being said, we are now going to take a look at Jupiter's upcoming sextile with Uranus. Of course, Jupiter's in Pisces, Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, and we are going to run it through the 12 houses by rising sign. So let's just refresh on what's going on here. I did a video on this at the start of the week. Here's Jupiter in Pisces making a sextile to Uranus in Taurus. And the sextile is going to perfect. Let's move this forward a little bit so you can see. Whenever two slow-moving planets like this are making an aspect to one another, it's a long period of time. So we're talking about a slow-moving, slow-developing transit that will continue to build in the days to come. So this perfects not until about this February 17th into the 18th. And so that also will take us beyond, this transit will take us beyond that date by virtue of the fact that the planets will then separate, and within about 3 degrees of separation, the effects are still very noticeable. And that takes us all the way till about the first week of March. So a long, slow transit, one of the bigger transits of the year. Sextiles aren't always something to write home about, but to me, this one is undeniably important. So what we are going to do is we are going to run it through by rising sign and take a look at the house combinations so that you can get a sense of how this might be, how these two planets and their engagement might be showing up in your own birth chart. Now, remember that sextiles are of the nature of Venus. So we generally have a pretty harmonized relationship between these two planets at the moment. And that's key in terms of understanding it. We're looking at a very productive, helpful aspect overall. Of course, what does that mean for each person? You know what I mean? It's relative in this world. Good is often bad and bad is often good in terms of, Jupiter, Uranus could help selfish people get ahead, you know what I mean? So it's not, when I say good, I just mean obviously relative to the subjective ups and downs of life. This tends to be a transit that people like. It tends to be one that people say, oh, thanks, that was kind of helpful. But let's take a look. So you can see we're going to be looking at the two houses in a dialogue with each other as we run it through all 12 signs. Okay, so we're going to start with Aries as our first rising sign. And let me just make sure that there we go. So you can see that Jupiter in Pisces is making the sextile to Uranus and Taurus from the 12th to the 2nd houses. So the 12th house was called the house of evil spirit, and a place that is often about that which undermines us. So not exactly a rosy place to root an interpretation. But the good thing is that Jupiter is a benefic. And so you have some interesting combinations that can come about when Jupiter's in this house and well dignified as it is in its own sign of Pisces right now. Connecting with Uranus in the second house, which is a place that is associated with resources. Our resources can be financial, they can be different things that we have at our disposal, different skills that we have, resources that we can rely on to support our life. So the potential here could be that we see errors in judgment. Let's say Jupiter's a planet that has a lot to do with judgment when it comes to the management of our resources, excuse me. So one thing that I would look for would be get rich quick schemes or anything presenting itself as lucrative or positive or productive around the development or cultivation of resources or money that maybe isn't as good as we think it's going to be. However, this is also about, let's say, an unexpected resource coming to help you out of a difficult situation, implied perhaps by the 12th house. The desire to help other people or do something generous with your resources could be a part of Jupiter in the 12th with Uranus in the second. Maybe some kind of unexpected or unpredicted change to resources or money that creates a little bit of temporary chaos, but then there's some kind of silver lining vis-a-vis Jupiter in the 12th house. Also, I could see there being allocation of resources to the topics of mental, emotional, or physical health. This 12th house sometimes being a place that's associated with health. So those are some of the things that I would watch for if you're an Aries rising. Let's go ahead and take a look at Taurus. If we put Taurus on the ascendant, then we're talking about Jupiter and Uranus across the 11th and 1st houses. So now we're talking about the 11th house, a place of groups and friends, allies, benefactors, wishes and hopes for the future. And the 1st house, which is a place of identity, physical health, the body, and our sense of who we are and where we're going with our lives. A very existential place. So I wonder about inceptions, meaning the starting of new things, very 1st house Uranus, as they relate to friends or groups or collaborations or projects with groups of people or with allies or friends. I wonder about how we are changing personally and what kinds of questions it's bringing up for Taurus rising around groups of people and identity. So who am I relative to where I belong or where I fit in socially? And you could see some breakthroughs there in terms of finding your place or your sense of where you belong. The desire to make improvements to your mind and body or physical health by finding the right allies comes up. Useful resources that you find in other people or in groups or communities that benefit the development or cultivation of your personal evolution. I'm growing as a person thanks to these people or this group or these resources that I've found that are helping me to create a kind of personal breakthrough. These are the kinds of combinations of themes I would look at with Taurus rising. If you go to Gemini rising, then we're looking at the aspect being made from Jupiter to Uranus from the 10th place of career back to the 12th place, that place of the evil spirit, that place that is called the joy of Saturn. I look at Jupiter in the 10th and I go, well, this is probably good news for career for Gemini risings. But then with the sextile to Uranus in the 12th, I wonder at what cost? Are there ethical compromises being made? Or again, are we indulging in some kind of scheme or plot to get ahead or to move forward or to advance, but one that's deviant in some way that could get us into trouble? Uranus in the 12th is sometimes rebellious to a fault and will eventually, bear the consequences for breaking rules or playing too far outside of the box somehow. I wonder also about themes of insurrection or rebellion in the workplace, but also opportunities at work that are humanitarian or that show a generous concern for the welfare of other people. Oftentimes a 12th house theme as well. Also, just the general idea of opportunities coming up that help solve a crisis. When you think of Jupiter, Uranus, 10th, 12th, you sometimes think of the feeling of there being crisis and something good comes out of it. It's chaotic, but something good comes out of it. So those are all things to be excited about here, I think, if you're a Gemini rising. right, let's put Cancer on the ascendant next. With Cancer on the ascendant, we're looking at the aspect being made from Jupiter Uranus across the 9th and 11th houses. 9th house was called God and the joy of the sun. The 11th house, groups, friends, allies, the joy of Jupiter. So the connection between groups and faith, groups and learning, friends, allies, and the development or cultivation of our guiding beliefs or principles, questions about institutions of knowledge, learning, religion, travel with friends. These are the kinds of themes that I would see as most important. Breakthroughs around one's sense of purpose and one's philosophical or spiritual GPS. Finding like-minded people who share similar beliefs. I see community, especially around topics of learning, faith, and the desire to expand one's horizons mentally or spiritually. Those are the big themes I see for Cancers. Let's move forward to Leo on the ascendant and pull up my notes here. With Leo on the ascendant, we are now looking at Jupiter in the 8th, Uranus in the 10th. Now the 8th is associated with, I like to broadly refer to it as a place of karmic contracts. So things that we owe other people owe us, entanglements with other people, the need to liberate ourselves from such entanglements. Sometimes, contracts are good too, blessings, resources that come from others. So with Leo rising, and then you see Uranus, of course, in the career house of the 10th, I think about blessings or opportunities coming through relationships that benefit us or that help us to reach our goals or aspirations professionally. I think about partnerships and karmic contracts with others that somehow align with changes we're trying to make in our careers. I think about maybe the desire to break one's mold professionally, but needing help or being inspired or influenced by other people to do so. I also wonder generally about the need or desire for revolution or change in the career, but what might be required of us or expected of us from other people, and how can those two things harmonize? So those are some of the things I see for Leo. Let's move forward to Virgo. So for Virgo rising, we're looking at Jupiter in the 7th and Uranus in the 9th. I think a lot about the combination of love, romance, sexuality, as well as faith, learning, in the higher mind. So sometimes we have to take a look at our philosophy when it comes to love, relationships, our sexual energy. We have to look at, when considering a new partner, how much do I need to share in common with this person when it comes to my faith or beliefs? Sometimes in an existing relationship, you hit periods of time where suddenly you realize that you're both evolving or growing spiritually, and there's something that can be shared there between two people, philosophically or when it comes to your guiding principles or beliefs in life. This might be the time, for example, when a couple decides to take a retreat together or take time out of the busy schedule to enjoy a class together of some kind. I could also see this generally being about maybe like important mentors or teachers entering your life and challenging your paradigm. And that could come in the form of a literal teacher with Jupiter in the 7th, or also the teaching that comes through relationships. How are the lessons of relationships opening your mind or changing or helping you evolve your spiritual life? So that is for Virgos. Let's go forward to Libra rising. If you are a Libra rising, then Jupiter's in the 6th and Uranus is in the 8th. I think this is one of the tougher combinations because these two houses are both challenging. The 6th house is called the joy of Mars, and a place of hard work and conflict and sometimes sickness, but also sacrifice on behalf of things that we deeply care about. So I wonder about the potential for peaceful resolution to conflicts as one possibility, but of course that still implies that there could be some conflict. I think of the need to break free from agreements or relationships, obligations, or debts that are no longer serving us, which might be difficult, but ultimately liberating. I think about healing and sacrifice. What will we sacrifice to be free from suffering? These are the kinds of themes that I see for Libras right now. Also, it's possible that, again, that there is something beneficial that comes out of a conflict or a crisis that ends up being very useful, a benefit of some unexpected benefit or silver lining that comes through conflict. And also questions about what is worth sacrificing. If we put Scorpio rising on the ascendant, then we're looking at Jupiter and Uranus across the 5th and 7th houses. And to me, this is maybe one of the more kind of exciting ones, because lineups, because you have the 7th house, a place that was called Kama by Indian astrologers, meaning pleasure, and sex and relationships and marriage, all associated with the 7th house. Then you have the 5th house, which is called the joy of Venus, and also associated with pleasure and romance and sometimes sexuality. I feel like this is the Scorpios have the sexy version of this transit. You know, whether it's pleasure, creativity, sexual or creative tension in relationships, breakthroughs around what defines or constitutes pleasure and good times and happiness with other people, the need to experiment or, you know, try to rekindle the fire of passion in a relationship where maybe it's been dwindling for a while. Also, just in general, I like the idea of there being potential for pregnancy with this one. Jupiter in a very fertile water sign in the 5th, connecting with the surprising Uranus in the house of love and relationships. Surprising things happening around love, relationships, sex, children, procreation, as well as creative collaborations in general. I like this as a time for Scorpios where I'll just generally looking at what constitutes fun and joy and pleasure and creative satisfaction. If we move forward to put Sagittarius on the ascendant, then we're looking at Jupiter in the 4th and Uranus in the 6th. So for this one, I look at obviously the 4th house being the place of family and home, roots, land, property, parental karma, and then the 6th house again being the joy of Mars, at a place of conflict, hard work, sometimes sickness, but also sacrifice and sort of selfless service selfless service to things that we really deeply care about. The makes me think, I wonder if there is some combination of growth, expansion, and opportunity around the topics of home, family, roots, but there's also some need to make sacrifices or compromises. They may not be entirely easy, but for the sake of growth, we'll do it. For example, okay, we're having another baby, and now, you know, I'm losing my office because we need another room for the kids or something like that. That's not happening over here, by the way. So, but the idea of there being growth around home, family, love, you know, in the domestic side of life, the family, the loving bonds of family relationships, well indicated by Jupiter in the 4th, but Uranus you know, has to harmonize with Uranus in the 6th, the place of disruption with Uranus there, or an energy of disruption, potential conflict, hard work, sacrifice, but something good perhaps coming out of it. So that's what I'm seeing there. Also, you could think about liberating karma that's being liberated around the roots and family. Not easy, but ultimately very freeing. All right, so let's go forward to Capricorn on the ascendant. If you are a Cap rising, then Jupiter and Uranus are falling around the 3rd and 5th houses by whole sign. You know, the 3rd house was called the joy of the moon, and it was called goddess. And then the 5th is called the joy of Venus, the other goddess. So what I like about this one is the potential for there to be the 3rd house also associated with the immediate environment around us, as well as our mind. So I like this as upgrading our like mental, emotional, and physical environment to be more conducive to joy and creative fulfillment if you're a Capricorn. For example, someone might say, I'm going to build my own home office, or I'm going to make one room in the house that's just totally dedicated to things that really bring me a lot of joy and happiness. But also, I think you could see, if you're a creative type, you could see some really interesting, innovative ideas or projects, ways of sharing your voice or communicating with others creatively. I also think in general, there's positive vibes around home and family. These houses flank the fourth house of home and family. So I also wonder about changes to the environment that in time will bear fruit and bring about more joy and happiness. Also think potentially about themes around women, children, siblings, family members, people that live nearby, and there being exciting energy around those things and people and places. So, okay, let's go forward to Aquarius on the ascendant. We're going to have Jupiter in the second and Uranus in the fifth. So here we have the topics of money, resources, and then home and family. I like this one. I think this is one of the more subjectively positive combinations where you could see growth of assets, resources, money, and maybe the purchase of land or property or the selling of land or property, a change that's liberating around money and finances that allows you to have more freedom at the roots to move around. And so I like the idea of financial, family, and maybe living environment, karma, all experiencing breakthroughs and growth and blessings this month if you're an Aquarius rising, or the connection between money, resources, and home, family, living environment, just generally producing good things this month. So finally, we will end with Pisces. You've got your home planet, Jupiter, in your home sign, first house. And we are therefore looking at, and then Uranus in the third place that's associated with the moon, the mind, the environment around us. It's the third house is one of the most nebulous houses, right? Because it's a lunar house, which means it's a bit like a mood ring house, mind, body, environment, and the fluctuations of those spaces day in and day out. Well, Pisces in the first house, of course, pertains to your identity, your body, your sense of who you are. And then, of course, the Uranian desire for change and revolution around the environment, the mind, and the mind-body connection. So I see this as the potential for a lot, like the mind-body connection for Pisceans with this transit is really strong, which to me can result in changes to lifestyle that are beneficial, changes that help you to feel healthier. And overall, I think of it as the potential for both personal and intellectual growth and change. I'm changing my mind. I'm changing my body. I'm changing my sense of who I am. I'm evolving in the way that I think or communicate. I think it's also a time of starting things based on interesting or out of the box ideas and questions about the relationship between the environment around you, whether that's in love or work or at home or wherever, the environment around you and who you're becoming or who you are in relationship to it. Sometimes when we're changing, it's as though the change can't be implemented until we take the time to change something around us in a room, in our house. Something around us has to change to honor or reflect a change that's happening inside. I see the connection between those two areas being pretty positive. Also, this would be a great time for the launching of any kind of project that involves putting myself out there. So those are the kinds of things I'm seeing at any rate. All right, well, that is what I have for us today, taking a look at Jupiter and Uranus, the sextile that they're making through the houses based on the rising sign. I hope that this was useful for you. Please use the hashtag grabbed and put Jupiter sextile Uranus and tell us your story. How are you seeing it show up based on these house combinations? I would love to hear your stories. We're going to be sharing some more stories probably in the next week or so. I like to get a whole bunch of good ones before I do another episode. We've got lots of them coming in. If you don't want to put it in the comments section, you can always email us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. So thank you, everybody, for sharing so many good stories recently. I have been aggregating some of them. They're really good. And looking forward to sharing some of those with you guys soon. I hope you guys are having a nice week. It's that midpoint of our week today. We'll have more astrology tomorrow and Friday. All right. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.